Welcome, children. Greetings to the biobotany classes after a long gap. Today, in our class, we are going to learn about population interactions, which is lesson number 24, which is in Unit 5, Ecology and Environment. So, in this lesson, we are going to learn about the interrelationship which exists between organisms of a same community or organisms of a same population. Right, I said community or population. We should know few terms when we are learning about ecosystem. The first one, like ecosystem, already you have studied. It's a system which has organisms and its abiotic factors which are interrelated among themselves, right? So when we are learning about environment, when we are learning about ecosystem, this interrelationship is also very important to know. So this population interaction lesson, you are going to learn about the interrelationship between organisms of a particular population or organisms of a particular community. A community is composed of various populations. If you are talking about a community, a school community, for example, we can say that there you can see students population, teachers population, and non-teaching staffs, non-teaching people's population, right? And then parent population will also be there. So in that community you could see a lot of population. So there comes the hierarchy. Population is composed of organisms and community is composed of population, and ecosystem is composed of various communities, right? So in this lesson we are going to learn about the interactions or interrelationship what we can see among the populations of a particular ecosystem. So when we are talking about relationship among organisms, this relationship may be intraspecific or interspecific. This word, it's not a new word. Already you have studied about these two words, intraspecific and interspecific. Intraspecific means within the same species. What is the relationship between the animals of a particular species or a particular population? That is intraspecific relationship. What is the relationship what is the relationship shown by one tiger with another tiger of the same population or of the same community or of the same ecosystem? Interspecific means what is the relationship existing in between a plant and an animal, or a plant with another plant. Okay, a small tree with a very small herb. So that is interspecific relationship. So this is what we are going to learn in this lesson. And intraspecific, it's not in your syllabus. Just to gain knowledge, I'm just giving a gist of intraspecific relationship. This is not in your syllabus. So this intraspecific relationship may be of various types. The first thing what is given is about dominance hierarchy or pecking order. This dominance hierarchy or pecking order talks about how in a community or in a population, how one particular organism makes the leadership. The best known example for this is in a flock of birds you could see, or in a herd of animals, in a cattle, you could see that one animal will be the leader. You can see that in an elephant's herd, or you can see that in a flock of birds, you can see that one bird or one elephant will be leading the entire remaining group, and all other remaining organisms will be following the leader, right? No matter what the situations are, but they will be following the leader. So this is what dominance hierarchy or dominance pecking order. So this is for their existence, for their survival. They are supposed to follow their leaders. This is a kind of intraspecific relationship. Next kind of intraspecific relationship is about territoriality. So this territoriality, we have seen that in dogs especially. We have seen that directly. Even the stray dogs. Okay, I'm not talking about the pet dogs, even the stray dogs. The stray dogs, generally when a new dog comes into a street, the stray dogs used to make huge noise. They will not be allowing the other dogs to come into the street or this place where their stray dogs are living. So that is what territoriality. Okay, they are the owner of that particular place, or they are the habitants of that particular place. They won't allow other organisms to come into that territory. So they will be marking this territoriality by using urination or defecation process. Tiger, lion, almost every organisms used to do that territoriality, right? The next behavior, or the next intraspecific behavior which shows that intraspecific relationship, is altruism. This word altruism, they can ask you this in generally competitive sort of exams. So altruism is actually a sacrificing relationship. A sacrificing relationship in sense, one out of the entire population, one organism will be doing that sacrifice behavior. It will be having that sacrifice behavior so that the remaining organisms of that particular colony is being saved. This behavior we can see only in social animals. Social animals means animals which are living in colonies, which are living as a group, which are living as pack. Okay, so you can see this behavior only in social animals, like in bee, or like in a pack of hyenas, or in a pack of wolf, fox. You can see in mongoose, you can see in you can see in animals like those who are living in groups. Okay, you can see that even in human, right? You can see that the sacrificing behavior, you can see that what our fathers generally do. That is altruism. Okay, altruistic behavior you can see in families too. So this is altruistic behavior. So this is all these relationships, or all these interrelationships, are about one particular species or one particular group. So there is intraspecific relationship. And the next thing what we are going to really learn is about interspecific relationship. Interspecific relationship means the relationship which is being shown between organisms of two different species. So that is what interspecific relationship. So while we talk about interspecific relationship, some of the interspecific relationships are positive and some of them are negative. Okay, in a community we need to know about both positive and negative relationships, because negative you can't say that they are completely wrong or they should be completely avoided. That is also necessary to make one community existing. That is also necessary. Negative relationship is also necessary. So you should know about both the kind of positive and negative relationship. So in positive relationship, the first one is about commensalism. So in commensalism, first we need to know the definition. What is commensalism? So in commensalism, it's a relationship existing between two different organisms, in which one is completely benefited and the other one is neither benefited and nor harmed. Okay, I guess you can understand that it's a associationship between two organisms, in which one is completely benefited, one is purely benefited, and the other one doesn't have any role to play in that relationship. Right? So by saying the definition itself, you could understand that it's not a permanent one, or it's not a mandatory or obligatory one. It's like they are living together for one cause, one particular cause. Right? Even if it is getting replaced, even if the other pair or the host is being replaced, no problem with that relationship. It's not going to get damaged or something. The organism can survive. But I'm going with the examples. There are so many examples that we could see about commensalism. There are so many examples. Let me give you one well-known example that's what you have seen in your directly what you have seen in front of our school A block. In front of exactly in front of A block, there is a huge money plant which is growing on the neem tree. Right? Remember that money plant is actually showing a commensalism relationship with that neem tree. Okay, how this money plant can't stay straight, can't stand straight, it can't grow straight. It's a very weak stemmed plant, but while it grows up, it will be developing very woody, thick stem, but still it can't stand straight. Right? It's a very weak stemmed plant. So this plant requires a support. So if the mango tree is nearby it, or if the neem tree is nearby, it will be growing, leaning towards that. But in case if there is a building, it will grow. Right? So the mango or neem tree doesn't get any benefit from the money plant, which is termed as liane. Liane is a weak stemmed plant. Okay, so the liane doesn't get any benefits from the plant which on which it's being leaning on. So that is a kind of commensalism relationship. Right? Now I guess you could understand that really better. And the next example what I am going to tell you is about epiphytes. Here you can see an epiphyte. I have shown you epiphyte during last year on the peepal tree, just in front of A block again. On the peepal tree there are some plants like these sort of plants are there which are growing on that. Orchids, some of the orchids are growing like this. Okay, so these plants, what they do generally is they will be just growing on the trunk of another trees. This kind of plants we can see in only in rainforest. We can see these sort of plants. They are just actually they are fern category plants. So these plants generally they doesn't require, they are not parasites. Okay, so what these plants are doing is, instead of soil they will be growing on this trunk. Okay, and these plants, this is termed as epiphytes. Epi means above and phyte means plants. So plants which grows on another plant is known as epiphyte. So this epiphytic plants generally will produce a root. Okay, that root is known as velamen root, or the root is completely packed with a tissue called velamen. I'll spell you that, VELAMEN. Velamen tissue will be found in this kind of epiphytic plants. So this velamen tissue which is found on this epiphyte, which is found in this epiphytic plants, will absorb moisture from the atmosphere, from the surrounding. So they don't want to go dig into the soil to get in search of water. They are getting water directly from the velamen tissue, which will be like a sponge. They will be absorbing water from the atmosphere where they are living. By the help of their green leaves, they can do photosynthesis, and water is being supplied by the velamen tissue. So this plant is not at all getting affected by this plant, this epiphytes. So this is a kind of commensalism relationship. Instead of this tree, if this epiphyte is growing on some other tree, okay, it can grow. This tree is not providing any support for this plant except the place where they are living on, right? So this is a commensalism kind of relationship. And what is this? You all know that this is the very good, very slow, very laziest sloth bear, right? So this sloth bear, generally sloth bears will be having one green tint on their body. You know the reason, I guess you may know the reason. Algae used to grow on their surface, because as they are very slowest, algae used to grow on their fur. Okay, so the fur started to show a green tint, isn't it? So what causes this, or what is the benefit of this? Actually this algae is growing on this. Algae is a producer, but still this sloth bear doesn't get any benefit from this algae, right? This algae is simply growing on that, and the algae is doing its own kind of food nutrition. It's doing its photosynthesis, it's doing its nutrition. They doesn't get any benefit from that. But the sloth bear, maybe they are getting benefit, because it's like a green coat. They are providing somewhat humid, and they are providing a little bit warmthness because of the presence of this algae, right? So instead of having one thick fur coat, they are having algae on their body. That's it, right? But the algae doesn't have any benefit because of this sloth bear, right? So this is epizooan. This kind of relationship what a sloth bear and an algae shows is epizooan. Epizooan means this algae is termed as an epizooan algae because they prefer to grow on animals. So epizooan, that means on animal this algae is growing, epizooan. So this is another example. Now we can go with this example. This is a very familiar dory fish, right? So this is generally clownfish. Dory is the fictional name, but this is clownfish. You may all know that. So this clownfish generally used to hide among sea anemone, right? The sea anemone comes under Coelenterata, right? Coelenterata. Yeah. So this sea anemone, when the sea anemone is getting some food, sea anemone is preying some food, the remnants this clownfish may also get. And clownfish is getting protection from this sea anemone's tentacles. Clownfish is very vibrant in its color, so it can get protection from sea anemone. Protection because of sea anemone, they can get protection from this. But the sea anemone doesn't get any benefit because of this because of this less number of small clownfish, right? So this is also a commensalism kind of behavior. And the next one is whale and barnacles. Okay, this is barnacle, right? These barnacles generally grow on the back and also on the fins of whales. And the whale actually doesn't get any benefit, but nowadays scientists started to add this into the next kind of relationship. but it is believed that the barnacles are not doing much work with that, but the whale, when they are eating food or when they are moving, barnacles are also started moving, and when the whale is eating something, barnacles is also these barnacles are also getting the food from the whale. So that is what the relationship between these two. But now what the scientists feel is barnacles are cleaning the microorganisms on the surface of whale. I referred that and I couldn't get much support about that, but it's given in some text, it's given in some pages, it's given some journals, it's given that the barnacles are cleaning the microorganisms, but the barnacles are actually fixed onto the skin of whale. So I don't know about that. You can refer and know about it. But barnacles and whale, they are barnacles growing on the whale, they are showing commensalism kind of relationship. That's what the fact, commensalism kind of relationship. So barnacles are getting benefit, not the whale. And one more example I can tell you is about cattle egret and grazing cattle. This grazing cattle, when they are going into the marshy land, they will be moving the insects from the grasses, from the herbs. So this escaping insects are being eaten by the egrets, which is just sitting on the back of the cattle, but the cattle is not getting any benefit because of the egret. So that is a kind of commensalism relationship, right? So these are all the example for commensalism kind of relationship. In general, in board, they can ask you question about commensalism with example. They can ask you to explain commensalism with example, or else they can give you examples and they can ask you to find out the relationship, what kind of relationship. So these are all the examples for commensalism. Okay, so this is a sloth bear with algae, and epizooan, and this is epiphyte, orchids or epiphytic plant on a tree. And then this is clownfish with sea anemone, and this is barnacles with barnacles on the back of whale. And then I said about the cattle egret with cattle, and what else? Yeah, lions. I said lions that grows on huge trees. So these are all the example for commensalism. The next kind of positive relationship, positive interaction, is proto-cooperation. So in proto-cooperation, it's also a positive kind of relationship. Here both the species are benefited, but the association is not obligatory. In first one, commensalism, only one is getting benefited, and the other one is neither benefited nor harmed, right? But it's not a permanent one. It can be permanent or temporary, but it's not mandatory one. But for proto-cooperation, both the species are benefited, and again the association is not obligatory. Association is not mandatory one, right? It can go separate. They can survive. They can live separately too. The best known example for proto-cooperation is the hermit crab and the sea anemone, which is sticking on to the hermit crab. So here they can live separately too. The hermit crab can go on, the sea anemone can grow on a rocky surface too, right? That doesn't require hermit crab for its survival. Again the same, the hermit crab doesn't require sea anemone for its survival. They can live separately too. But when they are living together, when this sea anemone sticks onto the hermit crab's body, they both are getting benefits. Okay, so what is that relationship? How do they exist their beneficial way or beneficial manner? When this coelenterata with its help of tentacles, when they are feeding on something, the pieces of prey will be considered as the food for this hermit crab. And when the hermit crab is moving from one place to another, the stationary sea anemone is visiting a lot of places, and it can get too many different kind of food too, right? So it can visit a lot of places, and it can get different varieties of food too. So that is a kind of benefit between these two organisms. That's a kind of relationship between these two organisms. So this is proto-cooperation. Proto-cooperation means it's both are benefited, but still they don't want to live together, but as they are living together, they both are getting benefits. That's it. And the third kind of relationship, which is very, very, very important, is mutualism. And mutualism is otherwise termed as symbiosis, right? So the organisms which are living under mutualistic relationship are otherwise termed as symbionts. Okay, so symbionts, here the associationship becomes mandatory. Okay, associationship, we can't separate these two organisms here. If we are separating that, they can't live as they are supposed to. So this is mutualistic relationship. They are the real positive interrelationship between these two organisms. They show real positive interrelationship between these two organisms. Now we can go with the example. The first example is lichens or lichens. Okay, lichens or lichens, they are really showing symbiotic mode of life. So what makes this symbiotic, or how do they show the symbiotic mode of life? You all would have seen this lichens, right? So whether it can be crustose or fruticose, what kind of lichen, no matter whatever they all are showing positive relationship among the members. You all already studied about this members of lichens or lichens. Lichen has one fungal partner and also one algal partner. The fungal partner is known as mycobiont, and an algal partner which is found along with that is known as phycobiont. So this fungal partner will be deriving nutrient from the area where they are growing. You would have seen this generally these plants are growing, these organisms are growing in dry areas and on rocky surface, on tree trunks. All these areas are dry areas where algae generally can't grow. So as the fungal partner is there, this fungal partner will be deriving nutrient from that particular place or from the particular surface, and they will be doing, remember that the fungus is doing generally the fungus generally will be doing extracellular digestion. So they will be producing enzymes, they will be secreting the enzymes outside their body, and that external structure will get digested and the nutrients will get absorbed. So this is the method of fungal digestion. So when fungus is doing this sort of digestion, they can provide nutrient by corroding the environment where they are living. And what is the nature of the algae found in this phycobiont present in this association is, this algae will be doing photosynthesis, and that food will be provided to the fungal partner also. So this is the best known example for symbiosis that we have studied from your lower classes too. And now we are going to learn about the next example, that is mycorrhizae. Split the word to know the meaning exactly. Myco for fungi, rhizae for the root of higher plants. So mycorrhizae, here the associating members are a fungus and a higher plant, root of higher plant especially. So this mycorrhizae may be exhibiting two different kind of relationship. One is ectomycorrhiza and another one is endomycorrhiza. You can see the spelling here, ectomycorrhizae and endomycorrhizae. Ectomycorrhizae, this is a best known example for ectomycorrhizae. So this ectomycorrhizae means this fungus generally grows outside the plant, and they are connected outside the plant. This connection, or the connection which is established between those two organisms, are outside the plant body. So that is ectomycorrhizae, right? Endomycorrhizae means this fungal partner or the fungal mycelium will go deep into the cell, and inside the cell they will be developing their haustoria, and this haustoria will derive nutrient, it will absorb the nutrient from the cells. So this is endomycorrhiza. And here you can see that ectomycorrhiza, they are growing on the surface of the plant body, or they are connected to the surface of the plant body. So that is ectomycorrhiza, and this is endomycorrhiza. Okay, ectoendomycorrhiza is not there in your syllabus, so you need to know about ecto and endomycorrhiza. Okay, so these are the two different kind of mycorrhiza. And the next example is nitrogen fixing bacteria. So this is a third example for symbiosis or mutualism. So this nitrogen fixing bacteria, there are a group of bacteria, you have studied that in 11th standard. There are a group of bacteria which will be invading into the plant's root. They, with the help of their nitrogen fixing gene, what they possess in their body, the bacterial body, they will be fixing nitrogen, and the nitrogen will be utilized by the plant, by the host plant, and the host plant will be providing food for the bacteria, food and accommodation for the bacteria, so that they can be producing this notches later on, the nodules later on, right? So this is nitrogen fixing bacteria. So they are invading into the root hair, and they are developing infection thread, and later they will be developing the nodules. Okay, so I can show you how this nodules will be. So this is how after the infection or after infestation, this nodules will be like this. So they are you have studied about that. Because of this nodules, they are getting increased surface area for absorption of more water, and also more nutrients can be absorbed by the roots, right? So that is what the nitrogen fixing bacteria's work. And the next example is about zoochlorella with sponges. The sponges generally will be having this zoochlorella inside their cells. So this zoochlorella, even though they are believed as they can do photosynthesis. Even though they are termed as zoochlorella, they can do photosynthesis. So generally this zoochlorella will be found on the outer surface or outer region of this sponges, and they will be doing photosynthesis so that the sponges are getting nutrient because of this zoochlorella. Instead, these sponges will be providing nutrients to the zoochlorella. Their metabolic waste will be utilized by these plants, this zoochlorella organisms. They are coming under like phytoplankton sort of organisms. They are getting nutrient from these sponges, and they will be using the carbon dioxide. They will be using the nitrogenous waste which is produced by the sponges. So that is and best known example for symbiosis. And then the next example is about chlorella and hydra. Chlorella, generally this kind of hydra which has chlorella in its body is would be green in color. So this so you can guess that when they are green in color, they will be doing photosynthesis. Okay, so this hydra looks like a plant, and it will be doing photosynthesis because of the presence of too much of chlorella in all the cells of its own body. This photosynthetic chlorella will be providing food, and the hydra will be providing all the necessary nutrients for the chlorella to do photosynthesis. And the next example is azolla and anabina. Have you seen this? This is azolla. This is like mosquito fern or duckweed. So this is azolla, and this azolla generally you can see this anabina inside this azolla while you are taking internal sectional view through microscope. If we observe this plant, we could see this anabina nostoc. These are blue green algae. So this algae used to go into this cells in their cortical or mesophyll sort of cells, and in the intermediate cells you can find this. So these things will do the nitrogen fixation, and they will be doing photosynthesis, and they will be providing food. They are sharing their food, and they are getting their nitrogen, so they are growing abundantly. So this will be used as a source of nitrogen generally in fertilizers industry, or generally they will be providing this along with the cattle feed, or in the paddy field along with weeds. They will be doing this as a kind of nitrogen supply supplement. Okay, so this is azolla and anabina, which is also showing the symbiotic mode of relationship. And the next example is about pollinating animals, like in case of like bees, the pollinating bees, the bees which are responsible for pollinators. These pollinators, how do they show their relationship with the plants? The plants will be providing nectar, and to get the nectar they will be going attracted by the flowers, and the flowers will be depositing their pollen on the body of the pollinators. When the pollinators are visiting the next plant, the pollination is also being done. So both are benefited, right? The animal is getting food, animal is getting tasty nectar, and the plant is getting the pollination being done. Pollination, because it's very important process in its life. And again, seed dispersal animals or zoochorous animals. Seed dispersal animals, the best known example what you can see now, especially during this lockdown time, what you can see is crow. While you observe crow generally will be eating the neem fruit. If you have a neem tree around your house, you just go observe it. The neem fruit will be eaten by the crow. Okay, and neem tree can only be grown by the seed which comes out of the comes out of the fecal matter of a crow. If you directly throw a neem fruit, it won't grow generally. It won't grow. Okay, how to grow a neem tree is the neem seed has to come out of excreta, come out as the excreta from the crow, then only it can grow. Okay, so that relationship, that kind of relationship is actually mandatory relationship. Without crow, neem can't grow. Okay, it looks like a tongue twister, right? So that's another example. And the next one what we can say is fig tree and fig wasp. Okay, fig trees and fig wasp. Have you ever seen fig tree? One is there just near our canteen, in the where the cycle shed is. Okay, not near the vermicompost pit, the other side, while the next to the entrance of the B block. Okay, in that area we have a, that's not in our campus, but still the fig tree is completely leaning on to our campus. So that is the fig tree. So in that fig tree, while you get the fig fruit, you just try to open it, you could see a lot of larvae there. So that is all from the fig wasp. The fig tree and fig wasp, they are so close, they are developing together. So when the fig tree is producing its inflorescence, this is not the fruit actually, it's inflorescence. And when this inflorescence is a special type, like a box chair kind of inflorescence, which is having a major opening, that is ostiole. And this inflorescence, the fig wasp is also having one special structure, that they do have an ovipositor. In this part they will be having long needle shaped ovipositor at the back. So this ovipositor will be injected into this ovary when they are in inflorescence stage. Inside the ovary, this wasp will be depositing the egg. So the ovule and also the egg will be developing together. And while they do this oviposition, they will be responsible for pollination too. They will be doing pollination also. They will be getting the pollen dusted onto their wings or onto their back. And later when they are doing oviposition in another flower, they will be doing the same kind, like they will be dusting the pollen onto the stigma. So the fig wasp is doing pollination and oviposition in the fig inflorescence, and these things will grow together. Okay, fig seed will grow and also the fig wasp larvae will also grow, and some of the fig wasp larvae will feed on the fig seeds. Okay, so it's like they both are growing together. That's why generally fig will be having this larvae or fig wasp inside it, because they both are growing together. Now we can go with the next example. The next example is Ophrys and bumblebee. This Ophrys and bumblebee is just one thing given in your book, but actually Ophrys is a kind of orchid which is having too many subspecies in it, and all this is an orchid. Okay, like this orchid is especially termed as a laughing orchid or a laughing face orchid, because it looks like one of its petal is modified into a shape like it exactly looks like the female bee. Okay, in almost all the Ophrys, they all are being pollinated by a kind of bee, and that particular bee, that specific bee's shape will be there in that petal. Okay, so when the male bumblebee, this is about Ophrys bumbelliflora, this is the Ophrys variety which is being pollinated by bumblebee. So this the female bumblebee looks like this. Okay, as the male bumblebee is being sexually deseated by this female bumblebee's structure by a modified petal, they will be doing pseudocopulation. Okay, they are being sexually deseated and they will be doing, this male bee will be doing pseudocopulation. So because of their pseudocopulation, you can see that the stigma is here and the pollens are also there. So when they are doing pseudocopulation, the stigma and pollen will get rubbed onto the back of the body of bumblebee. When they are doing pseudocopulation with another flower, the pollen is being deposited onto the stigma of next flower, right? So this is a kind of sexual deceit nature which we can see in Ophrys generally, and this is very common, and it's very nice to read about this Ophrys bees. So Ophrys and bumblebee, because this Ophrys flower will be producing, along with nectar, this Ophrys flower will be producing pheromones, that is the sexual hormones of this bumblebee too. Okay, so just to deceive them. So this is a kind of relationship between these two organisms. They are like the nature is actually too wonderful to know more about. So this is one such wonderful example. And the next two examples is about grass and Claviciptaceae fungi. This Claviciptaceae fungi, I guess you can recall this word, Claviceps. Claviceps purpurea. Remember that hallucinogenic fungus? This grass and Claviciptaceae fungi, they do have their relationship. Like grass, this Claviciptaceae fungi will be growing onto the leaf of grass or on the superficial layer of cells of grass. It will be growing, the mycelium will be growing, and Claviciptaceae fungi generally will be having a bitter taste. So when the grass is being bitten by a grazing animal, the grazing animals generally won't prefer this grass, this kind of grass, as they are producing this bitter taste, and instead this fungus are getting nutrient from the grass, so they both are getting benefits, right? And the next one is ant and plant mutualism. We can see that generally ant which grows in a plant, they will be getting the nectar, they will be doing pollination. Okay, so the plant is getting a pollinator free, and the ant is getting nectar and also the plant parts, young tender plant parts that the ant can feed on. So this is a kind of symbiotic relationship what we can see in ant and plant. Generally you can see this in even touch me not plant, very commonly that you can see in touch me not plant. So these are all the positive relationship. Of course we have discussed about only 3 examples, but it's very necessary for you to learn all the examples. Okay, so you have to go through all the examples. Just we learn about only 3 examples, that is commensalism, proto-cooperation and mutualism. So the thing that we have learned today is the first one, commensalism, means only one is benefited and the other one is not doing any role in that relationship, and I gave you some examples, recall all those examples. And then proto-cooperation, it is both the things are benefited but the relationship is not a mandatory one. And the next relationship is about commensalism. So in commensalism both are getting benefit and the relationship becomes a compulsory one, like a mandatory one, inseparable relationship they are showing. So that is what the next kind of positive interaction. So I am giving you homework. You please learn this entire positive relationship. You don't want to learn intraspecific relationship. You don't want to learn intraspecific relationship. In interspecific relationship you have to learn only the positive relationship. That's what we have discussed today. That's what I taught you today. So you have to learn only these 3. So your tomorrow's cycle test, botany will be conducted on tomorrow's cycle test. So you have to learn that, and your portion is the positive relationship, only this positive interaction between those organisms. Only these 3 things have to go through this 2 pages completely. Okay, thank you kids, and take notes of it. One day I will ask you to send the notes to me on after the next class. You have to send the notes to me, right? Thank you, and do well in your cycle test. Thank you kids.